The Starr and D'Amico Show, brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. Need blanks for your next event or club? Check out cheapesttshirts.ca. No minimum order, free shipping over $350. Same-day shipping on lots of items. Affordable, Canadian, ready to print your design. Brought to you by Catherine Prince at Remax Platine, your Montreal real estate connection. Call her at 514-702-2474 or email Catherine with a K, Catherine at catherineprince.com. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest with confidence, Catherine Prince, your key to the city's property market. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Looking for a lively downtown spot with great food and atmosphere? Come to McLean's Pub on Peel Street. Classic pub eats, plenty of beer, and all the sports on all the screens. Grab your friends and make McLean's your go-to place tonight. Brought to you by Cabletel, your full-service telecom partner for business and home. From structured cabling and phone systems to Wi-Fi, cameras, and alarms, Cabletel keeps you connected, secure, and performing at your best. Your partner for the future. It's Cabletel. Here we are live on this. Oh boy. The comments are nice and spicy already. Lots of fun on deck for the next hour or so. Happy lunchtime, happy snowstorm day in Montreal, everybody. Welcome to the live presentation of the Starr and D'Amico Show. Big shout out to our friends Chuck and Evie and their outstanding staff. Everything you're going to need for your furry family member can be found at Little Bear on St. Catherine across from Westmount Square, or you can shop online too at littlebearonline.com. They've got delivery, so check out all the options there. Marco's laughing already. What's up, brother? Good to see you, man.
You said furry family member, and I didn't initially think about pets, but that's okay.
Yeah. Might want to check your mic setting. I think you might not be on the Shure mic there. We'll get that adjusted pretty quickly here so we could just boost up. Marco's been very, very busy. He's had some outstanding interviews. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. If Marco wants to, he can, but he's got some very interesting stuff coming up in the not too distant future with RG, where he writes regularly covering the Montreal Canadiens. He was on the road on the weekend covering it, the Toronto Maple Leafs game. And here we are live, Marco, in the aftermath of the Canadiens getting curb stomped by the Lightning again.
Absolutely.
Their home record's been pretty bad, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like I said, you know, the Montreal Canadiens are banged up. We've obviously seen the information in front of us that a guy by the name of Jake Evans has been playing injured for at least 2 weeks now, if not longer. I'd venture at least a month now, just from what I know. And, you know, losing a guy like him is going to hurt. And if he's not playing 100%, it's going to hurt for sure. So you're playing, and we also now understand why Kapanen has been getting more minutes in consequence, just taking a lot of the defensive responsibilities away from Jake Evans. I think it's going to be ever so important, because if the Montreal Canadiens are sending Jake Evans to Philadelphia, as reported by Luc Julien of RDS, to get a second opinion, no bueno. It is no bueno. So, you know, I think it could be time to rethink the expectations for the season, but also rethink the way that the lines are going to work out, which Martin St. Louis has evidently already done.
So as we know now, in the aftermath of the Canadiens losing 6-1, Adam Engstrom, Owen Beck called up, as Marco just alluded to, a foot issue that has Evan seeing someone a doctor in Philadelphia. So he'll join the team in New York City, where the Habs will play at the New York Rangers Saturday night. Owen Beck slots down the middle. Juraj Slafkovsky, once again, moving around the chessboard. So is Alex Texier. So we'll see how that all shakes out for tomorrow's game against Philadelphia. But let me put this comment on the board, because the elephant in the room is Jacob Fowler getting called up. The Canadiens have 3 goaltenders in Montembeault and Dobesh. Dobesh allows 3 goals on 14 shots. Montembeault 3 goals on 13 shots. For the 5th time this season, Montembeault allows a goal on the first shot he faced. But it was this comment here that I find interesting from Laurentians 4892. Laurentians 4892 writes, "I'm confused. You guys said it was a horrible idea to call up Fowler. So which is it, boys? Don't hide behind the excuse that they have no choice now." And it's interesting, the wording. I like the wording, right? Is it an excuse or is it a reason? Marco, I hate to answer a question with a question, but are live sports not a constantly evolving thing where, for example, I'll give you a great example. The Montreal Canadiens played great defensive hockey, played great hockey over 2 games. At Toronto, home to St. Louis, right? Martin St. Louis, and we spoke about this Sunday morning. Martin St. Louis said the performance on the road on Saturday was their best defensive effort of the season. Loved it. Sunday, they play really well, have a bad stretch to start the second period and lose that game in regulation. And here we are now talking about, and we're going to put up a graphic on the board here, Marco. Let's put it up right now. Why not, right? Let's talk about the Canadiens' defensive structure, right? So here you go. Here's a great example, okay? So to me, it's about sports being a constant evolving thing where you can have a point of view in real time, and here comes the joy, right? Marco and I react to real-time things on this channel every single day, and here we are live right now. So I don't think, Marco, in my opinion anyway, having a look on Jacob Fowler is written in stone. Things evolve, things change. Marco, the Canadiens through 29 games have had arguably the worst goaltending tandem in the National Hockey League. There are a bunch of advanced and traditional numbers that back up that claim. So which is it, boys? Don't hide behind the excuse. Marco, your reaction here to the evolution of Jacob Fowler, your point of view, and now in reality, he's with the Montreal Canadiens at practice this morning.
I never said it was a good idea to call it Jacob Fowler. I've stood by it. I stand by it now. I don't think it's cool just because he's called up that it's exciting and it's great. I am very concerned about where this is going to go, and we're going to have an entire episode dedicated to this tomorrow for you guys. But
correct,
you know, I'll let a point of view slip here in the sense that, do I think that Jacob Fowler can play in the NHL? Yes. Do I think it's in the best interest of his development to do so? No. But the Montreal Canadiens need to take a lot of information in before they make significant decisions. And where I understand this decision, because I don't agree with it long term, where I understand this decision is maybe because there's information that you're not aware of. And that information is that there were nothing short of 12 scouts at the Montreal Canadiens game last night. There were 3 teams that had 2 scouts. Each of those 3 teams with 2 scouts, one of those scouts was a goaltending scout. So I'll let you put 2 and 2 together when I say this. The Montreal Canadiens are also looking to get as much information on their goaltending pipeline from top to bottom as possible. If that's the case, and this isn't a permanent thing, then I understand it. If it's a 1-game, 2-game thing, and then they send him back down, like, here's your cup of coffee, you earned it, we just wanted to see what you can do, now go back down and play for the rest of the year or whatever, I get that. Where I worry is the Jakub Dobeš situation that we saw last year, where he came in, had a really good game, played another really good game, played another really good game, and then they just continued to play him until at one point the adrenaline wore off and his season went down.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm afraid of. So do I think that this is a good decision? It's the only decision the Canadiens had other than making a trade, because as much as they called up Capo Kakkonen to cover for a sick Samuel Montembeault, the irony is that the last game that Capo Kakkonen has played, other than tonight, he was pulled from that game for letting in 3 goals on 7 shots. So the only logical player that the Canadiens organizationally could have called up if they wanted to bring in a guy was Fowler. I don't necessarily think it's a good idea, but I'm not the one managing this hockey team. And I know that Jacob Fowler, like I've sat down with Jacob Fowler multiple times and had conversations with him. I have an interview out with him right now.
Yeah.
And I think that he has the mental capacity to play a game or 2 in a vacuum and be sent down. What I don't want is a long-term use of this player to band-aid a situation in Montreal that is far bigger than simply just the goaltending situation.
And that's fine. And and it's not always one way. Like, there's a lot, you're gonna F this guy up, you're gonna screw with his head, you're gonna do all of these things. I mean, that may well be true. And I don't know what the average would suggest of the likeliness of that happening. But there's the other side to that argument. Well, what if it doesn't? What if he comes up to the National Hockey League and plays really well and doesn't look rattled? Your interview with BPM, you talk about how strong mentally, how focused this young man is. So the other side of that coin is, yeah, he comes in, he plays well, and the Montreal Canadiens can get back to brass tacks. And the other thing about this, right, when we talk about where this team is, it's not like that's the only thing, Marco, they've done. They've tried a bunch of things. Their 5-on-5 scoring for the better part of a month has been the worst in the National Hockey League. They don't score 5-on-5. They give up a shit ton of 5-on-5 goals against. Right there, worst in the NHL. The goaltending tandem, advanced analytics, goals expected against, mediocre, a save percentage, 870. Oilers goalies, 869. So we're talking about a fraction of a point separating 32 from 31 in the overall standings, right? And they've brought up Florian Jacki. They've brought up Engstrom. They've brought up Jared Davidson. They brought up Engstrom, Beck, and now Fowler again. So, like, they're trying different ways to solve this. They got Alex Texier for free when St. Louis canceled his contract. So they're trying a variety of ways. I just don't think right now, Marco, that looking at the trade option, anyone want to name me a goaltender that's available? There was speculation on the weekend that Tristan Jarry and the Edmonton Oilers might hook up, right? Well, okay. You tell Sidney Crosby and his Penguins, who were the first place team in the wild card race today, that they're going to move Tristan Jarry, right? Like, so I don't have a problem with the move today. I'm not scared of Jacob Fowler. If it doesn't go great, then he goes back to Laval. But Marco, you had to do something. You've tried a lot of other things. You had to do something here.
The problem is the trade market is activating right now. I could confirm to you the Canadiens are deep in conversations with at least 3 teams talking about potential swaps of players, this or that. They're talking. Right now, it's just no one wants to make the first move. Everyone's kind of looking around, waiting to see what's going on. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2, the Canadiens are not getting anything from their bottom 6 in terms of offensive contribution. Number 3, they're missing an entire middle 6 line and then some, because Laine, Doc, Newhook, and now Evans are out. And defensively, I don't think Jaden Struble can play a top 4 role.
Right.
I think Arbor Jacki has shown more of an ability over the last month than Jaden Struble has. And I believe that a guy like Adam Engstrom is probably deserved of a chance. And I think Struble, if still injured, because he has been nursing an upper body injury, should also sit. So the Canadiens are going through all this. Meanwhile, their goaltending is giving them the worst save percentage, the worst goals saved above expected rating. Every single metric you could possibly look for, they are either last or second to last when it comes to goaltending. So it's not, you could tell me that it's the defensive system. It is to a degree. It is. Absolutely. But at the same time, the Canadiens were allowing 11, 13 high danger chances a game last season, and we're getting the timely saves. So part of it is the players themselves. And this is why I don't believe in riding the hot goalie, because then you wind up in this situation. What happens when you try to ride a player like the Canadiens did with Dobesh and the performances that he puts out the last 2 games? That's exactly what happens. And now you're left looking around, and the only player that's got any momentum in nets right now in the entire Montreal Canadiens organization is Jacob Fowler. And unfortunately, that's the Canadiens have put themselves in that situation. You have 2 options: trade or call up. And right now, trade. If you trade for UPL, like if you trade for Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, first of all, you're sacrificing assets to do so, and that gentleman is signed for an additional 4 years, which means you'd be bottlenecking Jacob Fowler anyway by doing that. And Tristan Jarry, I appreciate the athlete; he's a really nice guy to talk to, mind you, but I don't think that's going to solve the situation for the Canadiens, because he sure hasn't solved the situation for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So there are no other options. You can't keep doing the same thing and expecting results. My honest opinion, and I hate making claims like this, but perhaps it's a coaching change, not a head coaching change, but perhaps a goalie coaching change. Maybe it's time to call up Marco Marciano from Laval, who has done fantastic work with Dobesh in Laval, fantastic work with Caden Primo when he was in Laval. Yes. The issue seems to be once they get to Montreal. If that's the case, maybe it is time to look at changing it up in terms of goalie coaching, because, and I hate doing this because Éric Raymond has done good work with Samuel Montembeault in the past, but if it ain't working, it ain't working. And I would rather they do that than sacrifice the future of what I consider to be a key piece of the Canadiens rebuild.
Yeah, almost kind of stole my thunder because I wanted to talk about Eric Raymond for a second,
I'm
right?
sorry.
About
I'll show myself out.
Again, I don't mind the Jacob Fowler call up. Welcome to the pros kind of thing, and feet to the fire, sink or swim, whatever cliche you want to do this, right? But the Eric Raymond angle of him and his players not being able to figure it out, like my read on the goaltending right now is one guy's been inconsistent, the other guy hasn't been very good. That's Sam Montembeault. The inconsistent guy for me has been Jakub Dobeš. They're trying to get Jakub Dobeš going. Look, Jonas Johansson was here. These guys played 4 games in a row, played back-to-back games, played at Toronto, came to Montreal, and had a light work session against the Canadiens in a 6-1 win. Like, I mean, I know you're not there. I know you're not in these sessions with Eric Raymond, but to me, Marco, I mean, that's a little bit of a concern that, to me, more than anything else, is Jacob Fowler working with a guy who hasn't been able to figure out the Canadiens goaltending in Eric Raymond. But that seems more like an off-season move too, right? Like, we could get into the coaching, whether it's Letowski or Stefan Robida or whatever, but it's an issue.
Sorry, I saw Marco Mafia in the comments, and I'm dead now.
You see, yeah.
That was fantastic. Where I think we could bring this conversation, and I think this is more about the analysis of the situation, is the Canadiens have leaned too heavily on their veterans. And that's Martin St. Louis' thing. He very much leans on the veterans because he doesn't want to overwhelm his youngsters.
Yeah.
But I don't and again, ladies and gentlemen, I absolutely love this player. He's a phenomenal player. He's going to be a star for this team. But the struggles that I have seen from Ivan Demidov during these times, that's what worries me. When I look at this hockey team and I think they need to do something, it's because I don't want to see a player like Demidov flounder, right? And I think there's a lot of anxiety towards Demidov's Calder race situation. I'm not even thinking about that. I'm thinking about the long-term benefit of this kid.
Yeah.
But just to give you a direct comparable, look at where. Sorry, I saw someone put up Hage for Blake Coleman trade proposal.
Yeah, I saw that.
I'm sorry, like I don't have anything to throw at a wall for seeing that. But when you look at the way that Beckett Seneca is currently playing, the situation that he's playing in, where you have a top line already that includes Troy Terry, Chris Kreider, and the explosion of Leo Carlsson. Correct. And then on the second line, right, things are a little bit easier where Mason McTavish is your center, right? And you're able to kind of get your mojo going. And then they fill out the rest of that, the line with whomever they would want to put there, a Granlund, you name it. Beckett Seneca is surrounded with talent where he doesn't have to be the play driver and he could just play his game because you're not overcompensating. You're not asking a talent player to be like a Selke winning forward here because of the imperfections of the lineup or the imperfections of the system. Mm-hmm. That's what boggles my mind. That's what worries me. Well, I liked what I've seen from Ivan Demidov because he has been showing more grit, more physicality, more mindset to the defensive side of the game, which is going to have to come one way or the other. But it's also led to significant hesitation in his play. He's passing too much instead of shooting again. It's you go back to old habits and you want to see a player grow in these situations. So when I understand the Canadiens having to make a move, they absolutely needed to make a move.
So then why not like the lineup changes at practice before the Canadiens hit the road in Pittsburgh tomorrow, Rangers Saturday night. Mm-hmm. Slavkovsky off the top line again at practice with Kapanen and Demidov. Beck in the middle of Texier and Anderson. Davidson now with Veleno and Gallagher. So the veteran line has been broken up to make room for Owen Beck. Slavkovsky off the top line again. Like, am I crazy? Like, if I'm riffing off what you said with Demidov, well, we know.
Context is key to answering that question.
Correct. Crazy in a fun way, at least I think. But then why not try Demidov with Suzuki and Caulfield then? Why not? Like, they put Bolduc up there. They put out of practice. No disrespect to the guy, but like, he's back there again. It didn't work out the first time. Why wouldn't he try Demidov? Why wouldn't he try Demidov there?
They're sheltering him. they're sheltering Bolduc and they're trying to bring balance to the lineup because when they go too top heavy, well, you see the results that you get. Yes, they may have been able to shut down the Leafs with that ideal, but a team that has two top six lines, if you go top heavy, you ain't going to win if your goalies ain't bailing you out like they have the last 2 years. And that's the
Yeah,
problem is the
right.
Canadiens, it worked last year. It 100% worked. You had one of the top 5-on-5 lines. Your defense was stable. And you had a goalie that was stopping, well above what was expected of him. You combine all of that, and that's what led to the Canadiens squeaking into the playoffs, and rightfully so. They were on fire. But teams have caught on.
Yeah.
Video is easy. I walk into the opposing dressing room, and you can see the notes that the coaching staff has put on the board. I'm not going to give away everybody's play here, but there are very key, consistent identifiers of how to play the Montreal Canadiens that the Canadiens themselves have not adapted to. And that's my issue.
Fair.
And I'm not going to put them out there, but I think everybody, that watches our show is very much at a level of hockey IQ that you have all seen this in terms of the way they're structured, the way the lines are structured, which lines to go out and take advantage of. So when you look at the way the Canadiens have built it out, Bolduc, they're playing him with Suzuki and Caulfield because they feel like he could produce offensively there, but could also be covered by Suzuki defensively. If Martin St. Louis had confidence in Zachary Bolduc's two-way game, we would currently have a Kapanen, Bolduc, Demidov line.
Sure.
We would, but it's not the case because he just doesn't feel like we're there.
Yep.
So Slafkovsky coming down, I like because it gives him more room to maneuver and be the play driver. It really just does speak to the lack of overall quality depth within the organization, be it at Laval or be it with the Canadiens. And it's unfortunate that the loss of an Alex Newhook is what did this all in. A middle six player that was playing above his, that was really kind of taking his stride. Losing him killed the offensive dynamics of the Canadiens' top nine.
Yes.
And they haven't been able to recover since because they don't have anybody in Laval that can step into that role like they maybe would next year when a Michael Hage turns pro.
Yeah. And that's why, the whole Alex Texier thing has been a very pleasant surprise because he hasn't looked out of place when playing with Kapanen and Demidov, right? Here's Surf X11. What are we even talking about? We're missing Doc, Newhook, Goalie, Line. We have multiple players playing above their punching weight. And here's who are we talking about? Suzuki and Caulfield are having strong seasons. Demidov is getting the praise from the opposing coaches. Mark Scheifele couldn't stop saying great things about what he saw from Ivan Demidov earlier this season. To me, the driving point, and it's been brought up a couple of times, is how porous the bottom six has been. We keep talking about youngest team in hockey. Guess what? They're getting younger with each passing day.
The core players are the youngest team in hockey. In fact, if you look at the importance, they're an even younger team when it comes to the importance of those younger players, because all the older players are basically bottom six players.
Yes, and you're getting, Mike Matheson's game hasn't been as sharp lately as it was, and maybe the minutes and the situations are catching up to him a little bit. Brendan Gallagher has been invisible, but somehow the coach still puts him up on a power play, plays over a minute per game on a power play on average this season. Where is Josh Anderson? And as we know now, Jake Evans apparently dealing with an injury. He's seeing a medical doctor in Philadelphia to deal with what's been reported by RDS as a foot injury. So he's not going to play tomorrow in Pittsburgh. You're going to see him maybe against the Rangers on Saturday night. So it's like, how many players are punching above their weight class? I don't think the answer is very many, and I'm quite disappointed in the veterans that haven't, to me, stepped up or carried the load enough or consistently enough, in my opinion.
I like the comment here of look at Anaheim. They got a nice mix of vets and youth.
Sure.
I 100% agree. But they also rebuilt. They also have been rebuilding since like 2018. They've been able to continue to add quality elite young pieces, right? Beckett Seneca, 3rd overall. Pavel Mintyukov at 10th overall. They obviously traded him, but Trevor Zegras at 9th overall. They just keep adding, Mason McTavish, third overall.
Look at their centers, Leo Carlson, Mason McTavish.
Yeah, exactly. 2 third overall, 1 second overall, 1 third overall center. And you got a 10th overall center that's playing in the NCAA. Like they've just consistently been able to draft.
Too, right?
Yeah, but they've just been able to add top end players that are being developed slowly but surely. And then what do they do? Well, they already had a Troy Terry there, who's a young veteran. We could, akin to what the Canadians have with Suzuki and Caulfield. But then you go and add a Chris Kreider. Then you go and add a Michael Granlund. Then you go and add a Frank Vetrano. Then you go and add a Jacob Trouba. Well, the Canadians don't have any of that. They've been banking on their youth the entirety of the time. Right. And my biggest critique to the Canadians, and it's being felt right now, the Canadians had 42 contracts out of 50 to start the season. At what point? Like, why?
Yeah, right.
Why? And that's the biggest question mark I have. Were you at that point so confident that some of your prospects would take a next step and that you wouldn't run into the injury bug again? Because yes, the Canadians were very lucky with the injuries last year. They only missed, I think out of 82 games, I think they only missed like 140 games lost to injury. Like that's huge. And I think Line A was a third of that. So to me, it's very difficult to look at that and to think that was going to be what the case is going to be. Now the Canadians are running into the injury bug that they had in 2022, 2023, 2024. And they don't have the depth to keep up with that. And I feel like not going to spend money on an additional legitimate bottom 6 guy, like you could have signed Sammy Blais, you could have signed Joe Veleno. Nothing would have stopped you from waiving those guys. Obviously, Blais got picked up on waivers, but he's in Laval right now, not even called up amidst all these injuries. What could have stopped the Canadians from spending a 2-year contract on a bottom 6 player that right now could have played on the 3rd or 4th line that you would have normally had as a 14th forward? Because to be quite frank, the Canadians have the worst bottom 6 prior to the injuries to Newhook, to Line A, to Doc. They had the worst bottom 6 on paper in the NHL. The only thing that helped them was the fact that they were playing Newhook, Kapanen, and Demidov as a 3rd line to begin with. But it was actually Doc's line that was playing as a 3rd.
Well, therein lies the rub, right? And let me remind everybody as we get to the 30-minute marker of today's live show, please like and subscribe to the channel. Mark and I put out pretty consistent Habs coverage on the daily. So thank you for that, as the road to 20,000 subscribers begins with each and every single one of you. And let's get ready for the holidays. Let's have some holiday drink together. Let's be around and be merry. We're going to be at Maison Publique McLean's for our 3rd ever live broadcast of this show. It's a game day for the Montreal Canadiens and Boston Bruins on December 23rd. So you can get away from the kids, get away from the family, come have some good drinks, some great food with great service, watch the Habs and Bruins with Marco and I. We're going to be there for an entire live viewing party. And we hope to see many members here, like our boy, K1 Max 637. Please come and join us. Let's have some fun. If you're nice, maybe I'll buy you a drink too, just to incentivize you a little bit. And you're going to love the food at Maison Publique McLean's on Peel Street, December 23rd against the Boston Bruins. So I saw Marco's clone is back in the chat again. Let's get to this from Biosphere. Stamkos O'Reilly. I mean, I don't think it's panic time personally yet, Marco, but giving up assets for veterans, whether it's a Stamkos or a glorified rental and Ryan O'Reilly, to me, Marco, that would scream panic more than calling up Jacob Fowler. So what about this viewer's comment about Stamkos O'Reilly would now be a good stopgap while the kids produce?
May cost you one of the kids to get him. Right. Then what?
Yeah.
That's the problem. Right now, they're asking for a 1st and an A prospect for O'Reilly. I don't think that's happening. I don't think anybody's paying that. But that's the price that they're sticking to. And they've had a high price in Nashville for O'Reilly dating back to last year's trade deadline. No one is going to gift the Canadians a way out. And you're not going to like the price point that that is going to cost the Canadians to buy themselves out of this hole. So I just want to be consistent and say that the Canadians don't have to rush this. I don't think the Canadians have to necessarily buy their way out of it. The way I look at it, and this is going to be a terrible answer to give to fans here, is
I like this.
if the Canadiens don't make the playoffs,
Yeah,
it is what it is, guys. It is what it is. I don't think many people can come back from this. I think it's going to force a structural reevaluation. I don't think that, as long as the Canadiens remain interested in Ryan O'Reilly, I don't think that we as reporters can stop banging the Ryan O'Reilly horse just because I don't see it that way.
right.
So back to the Canadiens, potentially missing the playoffs. Would this be a regression? I don't believe so. I believe that the Montreal Canadiens took advantage of a very weak Eastern Conference last year. It's no longer the case this year. It's far more competitive in the East this year than it is in the West. And the Canadiens did not have the injury bug. They were, I think, bottom
Correct.
5 in terms of
Correct.
games lost, games lost to injury last year. And now they're ranging top 5. So with that in question, and the players that you let go, the Christian Dvoraks, the Yoel Armias, David Savard that retires, you lost so much leadership that you did not replace. You've lost so many guys that played key roles, key secondary roles. Like, I don't think the Canadiens make the playoffs last year if it wasn't for Christian Dvorak,
Patrick Laine
playing the way he was down the lineup, Patrick Laine the way he was playing on the power play. Like, there's so many aspects of this, and so I just want to be clear when I say I don't think the core is regressed. I think everybody around them has regressed. I think the goaltending has regressed.
Correct.
I think the periphery defensive structure, like the bottom pair, or at least I feel like there's been a circle back moment or a back down to earth moment for Alex Texier. Sorry, not Alex Texier, Alexandre Carrier. We're going to get through this. And then you factor in the bottom 6 not showing up. Like, Gallagher had 20 goals last year. He has 1 right now.
Yes.
That's a
but
massive
like Jake
differentiator.
Evans, what was his shooting percentage? You knew it wasn't that sustainable.
Yep,
the goaltending is arguably the biggest surprise in terms of regression. I don't remember you saying it. I know I didn't say it. I don't remember too many people thinking that we were going to be talking in December on this 10th day of this month about how bad the goaltending has been as something we expected to see or a talking point, an area of concern. And I think, before we get back to some more comments, one of the interesting things to me that you had brought up there was regression, right? And I think most of us, and I'll speak for myself, they make the playoffs, great, gravy, unbelievable, right? But I also wasn't expecting playoffs, and I'm not saying the season is done like the dodo bird. I'm not saying that at all. But the more specific point about all of that was, as long as guys like Suzuki take another step, Caulfield takes another step, Slav, Hudson, Demidov, Noah Dobson now, I think as long as those players play well, take steps forward, I'm good moving forward, because it allows you a good level of belief around the foundation here, which takes me to Sino's comments. What do you think about Demidov's explosiveness? An issue for the future, ? I feel like his stride limits him a lot to create separation. It makes it hard for him to generate at 5-on-5. That's Sino's observation. Thank you, Sino.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with this. And that was something that I was very much aware of. So you have to factor this in. Last summer, not the one that just passed, last summer, Demidov had an ankle injury. So he actually couldn't, train the bottom half of his body. His lower body was just basically as was. So this summer was the first summer he was really able to improve his explosiveness. And there is a notable change in the way that he skates. I feel like it's something that's simply going to get better because his technique will also improve. I find his stride to be awkward as well, but it's a gliding stride. What you want to see more of is his straight line speed in the NHL. And I think, I think that if given the time, this is an individual that will continue to work on this. I think he's got more time to spend in the gym. I stand next to him. I think there's a little bit more meat to be put on his legs. I am not necessarily worried about his speed. No, because you can be as quick as possible. You can be one of the fastest players in the league. Look at Josh Anderson. But what makes Ivan Demidov dangerous to me is how quick he thinks the game, not how quick he plays the game. And I think that's what's going to make the overall difference is once he's used to the pacing, once he understands the level of speed that's needed in certain situations, he's going to be able to pace himself better. Remember, he's still a rookie playing his 30th game in the NHL last night. It's not a lot in terms of having it under your baggage. And I feel like this is a player that still has to catch up physically. So I'm not necessarily worried about that in that regard. And this is why I say the core has not regressed. Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki trending for career years. Slavkovsky is continuously getting up there in terms of his performances. Lane Hudson is on pace for a career year. And then so on and so forth, right? Like the key elements that are locked in, these guys are still improving. They need help. They need secondary scoring to take the load off because as I talked about earlier in the episode today, the message board in the opposing dressing room is the same.
Mm-hmm.
Stop Suzuki's line. Pressure the Canadiens' top pair. Take advantage of the rest. Boom. With a little bit more, differentiation in terms of strategy, but that's what it all boils down to. Everybody does this in the same context, and it affects confidence. It affects their ability. It affects their ability to perform, and it makes them overthink. And that's the problem that I see with Ivan Demidov right now is he's overthinking it.
From Habs chat, Beckett Seneca scored the tying goal last night with 0.1 seconds left. That was, by the way, a historic night in the National Hockey League with 4 buzzer beater goals from a very busy night in the National Hockey League. And it was kind of an okay night for the Canadiens on the out-of-town scoreboard with so much parity dominating the Eastern Conference. The Lightning, Boston, 36 points. The Red Wings are next with 35. The wild card teams are Pittsburgh and Philly. They're both on 35. The Devils finally won a game. They snapped a 5-game losing streak. They're on 35 points. The Rangers are 1 point up on the Canadiens. The Habs are 5th in the wild card race today. Toronto and Columbus are a point back. The Ottawa Senators, much like the Canadiens, inconsistent goaltending, injuries, hurting their competitiveness. Now the Senators have lost 3 in a row. They lost yesterday. They're on 30 points. The Buffalo Sabres on an Alex Tuck game winner. They're on 28 points. So it is tight across the board, which I appreciate the Canadiens making moves, trying to stay in the competitive balance. What about the defensive issues here and putting a lot on Jacob Fowler to say, you know what, can you make a timely stop? Can you be that to recover from what has been it's either sink or swim? The Canadiens either cover the middle of the ice and let everybody on the outside, or they play man-to-man and forget about the middle of the ice in front of their net. They can't find that consistent pattern so far.
Yeah. And I would say that the Ottawa Senators have basically made their choice on what the future of their goaltending will look like in the contract that they gave Linus Ullmark. So they have no way out. And they don't have a first-round pick to buy their way out. If they're going to make any changes, they will be marginal. When it comes to the Canadiens and what they can do and how they get to defer in terms of their goaltending, I think the biggest thing to keep into consideration with them is they don't have the quality at center that a team like Ottawa does. So Ottawa, what they do, because they're stronger at center with Dylan Cousins, Tim Stützle, and Shane Pinto when he is healthy, and then you have Grieg that they're using on the wing right now. They cover the center of the ice quite well. They control the pace of the ice quite well. They cover the neutral zone. They make it harder for you to enter their zone. And I think anybody who watched the game against the Senators last week, it's very indicative of what they did against the Canadiens. Canadiens don't do that. So it's a trickle-down effect of lack of depth where it counts, a defensive structure that stagnates, and goalies that aren't playing with confidence. It's a recipe for disaster. So one of those elements has to change for Montreal. I think goaltending, Montreal has made it no secret that they view a guy like Fowler as the future in that department. He's it's very rare for goaltenders to have signing bonuses or performance bonuses in their contract. Fowler does have performance bonuses in his contract for the 3rd year of his deal. So that the Canadiens think that he's going to be deserving of those bonuses. So they wouldn't put it there. It wouldn't be negotiated in if they didn't believe that he could potentially hit them. And so that's where they stand with that. I feel like with the Canadiens, unlike the Senators, the Canadiens are still improving. The Senators are where they are. The core is where it is.
Yeah.
And now they have to work to build around that core. The Canadiens are still adding core pieces to their lineup, right? Michael Hage turns pro, whether he plays center, where he plays wing, doesn't matter. He's going to be viewed as a top 6 candidate player. Alexander Zhuravsky, when he comes in, same concept. He's going to be viewed as a top 6 candidate player. These are guys you're going to be able to add to your core. Ottawa doesn't have that right now. So the Canadiens are at a different point with Ottawa. It's fun to bicker with them as fans. I get you, but they're not like the Ottawa Senators rebuild is done, for better or for worse. The Canadiens rebuild, unlike some of the hot take merchants that we saw in September, is not done. And I think it's very indicative of that. Your rebuild is not done when you don't have a number 2 center. Your rebuild is not done when you don't have an established top 6 that you can move around. Canadiens don't have that right now.
Yes.
And I feel like they're getting good play from some players that are overproducing, but they still have more to go.
I'm very anxious to see, because listen, in my belief, building up your top 6 is a hell of a lot more challenging than filling out and building up your bottom 6, right? Getting that coveted number 2 center, getting finally a number 1 center, perhaps a legit number 1 center for the first time in my life in Nick Suzuki, right? Trying to find a superstar up front, finding pillars on the defensive side of this. And let me go back to the bottom 6 guys, right? Josh Anderson, he's got one more year left, at $5.5 million. Brendan Gallagher, at long last, $6.5 million, 1 year left, okay? I'm going to be fascinated to see what Jeff Gorton and Ken Hughes do about that. How they go about tackling the bottom 6, because at one point, like, what's going to happen? Like, Brendan Gallagher, let's say next year, right? The salary cap, let's say it goes up to $110 million. That's the floor of the cap is going to grow exponentially. So if you have teams that need to get to the floor, I don't know if that makes the contract easier to move if you're Jeff Gorton or Ken Hughes, because without question, they need bigger, tougher, better bottom 6 guys. Without question in my mind.
Yeah, which is why I think they'd be willing to throw a certain amount of money at a guy like Kiefer Sherwood, for example.
Right.
I don't think that they're in the business of giving $5 million plus, but definitely a guy that they like, that they feel can bring elements that they currently lack, which is physical ability and being able to shoot and play that combination, right? It's what they're going to need to get through the playoffs. They're lacking that right now, and it shows. So when it comes to Gallagher and Anderson, I mean, Gallagher, you can't trade him without his permission. He's got a no movement clause. You can't waive him. You can't do anything. Anderson is a guy that if the Canadiens so see it, if they want to retain 50% and see if they find a buyer, sure, no problem. But if this continues, and I have little reason to believe it will. If this continues, the Canadiens are going to have to look at the avenue for this, because it's not even a cap space situation.
No,
it's a roster construction situation.
Agreed.
It's not that the Canadiens need the $6.5 million. They already had $5 million in cap space to start the season before the injuries began. So to me, it really does go back to the idea of they're occupying bottom 6 spots that when they come into injury those players cannot be used to elevate into the lineup and bring value to the team. So they're that to me is very striking. When you look at other good bottom 6s in the league, those players are able to be elevated.
Yeah.
Tampa has injuries. We know this.
Correct.
Some of their bottom 6 guys are moving into the middle 6, and they're able to do so without skipping a beat, and they're able to call up guys from Syracuse, and it works out. Sometimes they're good. I know they lost 3 straight or 4 straight before coming into Montreal, but they were still dead last at one point in the NHL, and then came right back in after a hot month of November. So that's what I'm talking about with the Canadiens. They don't have that. And until you have that, and you have the possibility to do so this summer via trade, via free agency, and I feel like the Canadiens will be dabbling in free agency, maybe not aggressively, but in some cases, I think that you cannot go into next season with both. Maybe one, but not both if they continue to play the way they are.
I mean, there's no world that exists, right? Like, we were talking about this before. before knowing what was going on with Jake Evans. And if you're just joining us, Jake Evans not with the team, seeing a doctor in Philadelphia to look at his foot. This reported by RDS. He's going to join the team in New York City on Saturday when the Habs play at the Rangers. So no Jake Evans tomorrow in Pittsburgh. Owen Beck practicing as the center on that third line. So we'll see how that story evolves as the days go by. But there's no world in my mind, as much as I agree with a bunch of comments, right? I watch these games, you watch these games. Brendan Gallagher doesn't have the juice, doesn't have the foot speed, the separation, the shot. Anderson has been, to me, puzzling, because I thought, he had figured it out with Martin St. Louis. It's been one step, if not two steps back. But Marco, whether it's Owen Beck that I'm not expecting big things from, I mean, even if Jake Evans were there, hard to envision Martin St. Louis making such what I would classify as a bold move, wouldn't it be? Wow. If he says, listen, Gallo, you're not playing tonight. Anderson, you're not playing tonight. Healthy scratch. You're watching this game from the press box. Enjoy the water. Enjoy the hot dog.
They can't. Unfortunately, they cannot. The Canadiens were playing with 20 men on their roster yesterday. They called up 3 players. They're now at the 23-man roster limit. They don't have any. The only players that they could send down to Laval without waivers at this time are the players they called up in the first place. Ivan Demidov, Oliver Kapanen, and obviously Jared Davidson. So you can't send any of those guys down, and you can't call up more players. And Jake Evans is now unofficially injured. So until they put Jake Evans on injury reserve, they can't call up anybody to replace them. Thereby, you can't scratch those players. So they've backed themselves into this in the sense that you would normally be able to call up Sammy Blair right now, for example, if they hadn't called up Jacob Fowler as the third goalie. But now, then you're in an optics situation where do you send down a Davidson? Do you set down a Jakob Dobes to make room for a guy like Jacob Fowler? What does that do to Jakob Dobes? What does that do to? What does that look like? The optics would be terrible. So they've backed themselves into a corner with these decisions, and now we're seeing that Martin St. Louis admitted in his press conference that Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon have been talking about calling up Jacob Fowler for a while now.
Yeah,
and that Owen Beck found out that he was going to get called up to the Montreal Canadiens 5 minutes before the game even ended yesterday. If that doesn't indicate to you that internally the Montreal Canadiens are ringing bells, that they're tired of what they're seeing and they're ready to make changes, I don't know what does. I've never heard of a player being called up before a game was even over.
Yeah.
Unless there was an injury. Unless there was an injury with like Jacob Fowler, Caden Primo last year when Montembeault went down with an injury in the playoffs.
I remember when Pierre Gauthier traded Mike Camilleri between periods.
Yes. The legendary Mr. Camilleri press conference.
The ghost, one of the more intriguing general managers that I've ever covered. Do you think the Canadiens are starting to have Toronto Maple Leaf syndrome, trying to win on pure talent, but the physicality and size isn't there? This was the same problem the Leafs had for many years. There's one viewer's perspective and question about what's going on with the Montreal Canadiens lately.
Yeah, I don't think they do. First of all, because at the time, I apologize to say this, Canadiens fans, but at the time, I think the Maple Leafs had the better core in terms of offensive production. Like the core four was fine in terms of their on-ice ability. The problem is they signed ridiculous contracts and a pandemic came in and basically was like, the cap's not going up for another 5 years. And so that screwed them in terms of their roster building, because they could have added those physical players. They could have gone and added more key defensemen to their lineup, but they got into a little bit of an issue with the fact the cap didn't increase like they thought it would. The Canadiens, on the other hand, are not there yet. The Canadiens are basically where the Toronto Maple Leafs were in 2017, when they were just starting to make the playoffs regularly. The only difference is they don't have a John Tavares being gifted to them via free agency.
Right.
So I don't think they're in the same spot. What I would say, though, is the Canadiens' defense is in a way better situation than the Maple Leafs were at the time where they were starting to go. And that's the bigger differentiator to me, is that they'll have that. Filling in what the Leafs lacked is easy if you put your mind to it. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you assets. It's going to cost you time, but you can do
Correct.
that.
Correct.
What's harder to do is to get the elite pieces in place. So if the Canadiens have them, good. That's great. But for them to reach it, and I agree with the comment that was made, you're going to need to have that little step more in terms of physicality. Sure. And that's why players like a Florian Xhekaj are attractive. Players like Hayden Papanikis are attractive to teams trying to build out their middle six. But I think you're going to see more size-oriented and physicality-oriented decisions when it comes to player acquisitions moving forward because of that.
Don't forget, we're going to be live at Maison Publique McLean's December 23rd for a live viewing party. Come watch the show live. Come eat, drink, and have some fun with Marco and I at Maison Publique McLean December 23rd. And it's the Habs and Bruins. Where will the Canadiens be 13 days from now in the standings? It changes every single day. And don't forget, you don't ever have to worry when you leave your house on vacation for a long weekend, even for a night out with your wife or your husband. Cabletel.com, the best in home security, has you covered. A trusted local business serving Quebec and Eastern Ontario for the last 20 years. Check out their unbeatable rates for the best in home security at cabletel.com. From member of the show, David Morris asking, do you think Martin St. Louis is the right coach to contend with in the future?
David trying to get me canceled here.
So I guess the answer is no?
Today, no.
Interesting.
Today, no. I don't think that Martin St. Louis today exemplifies the characteristics of a coach that could win the Stanley Cup.
Ooh, wow. There's a hot take.
And I hope that this doesn't get quoted and ends here because I'm not done. But like everything Martin St. Louis has done in his career, I have confidence that he will be able to reach that level. And it's funny because, and I really want to segue this, Martin St. Louis was not, someone that went through coaching, right? So I was talking about it with John Cooper yesterday after the Tampa Bay Lightning game. And John Cooper kind of broke down the similarities between how he started in Tampa Bay and the roster construction and the trouble that they had to go through, but in a different lens. When it comes to peaking too early and being in between two eras, well, he was talking about that, how they reached the Stanley Cup final in his third year and then didn't get back to the finals for another 5 years. One of which in those 5 years, they missed the playoffs because of injuries, which is what we're seeing in the Canadiens right now in terms of their trajectory. So he said, he's like, I understand fans want them to take the turn and be competitive right now. That's not how it works in the NHL. I'm paraphrasing here based on my notes.
But that was it. Yeah. Yeah.
And that Marty is a hell of a coach. And like whatever he's done in hockey, he will continue to learn from this as a coach himself and make this team better as he goes along. But I do think that there needs to be a certain level of patience, and I do think he needs a certain level of help. Wink, wink. Can't use Jeff Gordon.
Yeah, look, I mean, and he said it too. It's not an easy thing. Obviously he respects him. I mean, he coached Martin St. Louis, right? So he's got a lot of respect for the former player and the current coach who now he referred to, right? In that, he's so good to listen to, by the way, John. I love listening to this guy. He speaks so well and very intelligent, very calm. Even on his interview with Mark Denis, on the bench during the game, he had mentioned, he goes, man, this is my first real look at the Canadiens power play. He called it sick watching, and Tampa Bay's got an elite level PK unit, right? I think second best in the league going into the game anyway. And fully full of admiration for how the Canadiens moved the puck on the power play. But again, the only goal they scored was on that power play, right?
Yeah. And you see the issue to me, I think the power play setup is the most indicative barometer of understanding where the Canadiens are at this point. The Canadiens, 40% of the Canadiens' power play in terms of utilization belonged to Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. They were double shifted on both power play ways.
Correct.
If that is not an indication of we do not have the quality depth necessary to field two functional power plays.
Correct.
There it is. And I think to me, that's double shifting and over relying on Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki may have bailed you out last year, but unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen this year. And I think
you're trying to win games.
You're trying to win games. All it does is it's going to burn them. You're going to work them into the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. But again,
and it's not
what options are we talking about, brother? Like, like what other options are we talking about? Like they trot Gallagher out there all the time. More for Demidov,
Oh,
like
yeah,
Hudson had like 3 chances. I'm screaming on my TV, shoot the puck, shoot the puck, shoot the puck. He had
yep.
some great opportunities, but like, it goes back to that old depth, the lack of it, the lack of top 6 talent, and the over
Mhm.
reliance. I don't disagree. And I think, to round out the thought on Martin St. Louis, I see a team that has they talk like him. I think they try to play like him. I think he's a great
Well,
teacher personally. Like
yeah,
he's helped mold a lot of good players and made them look how they look today. But you can only work
but
with what you
like
have, man.
but like this team itself, I feel like there are elements missing. I feel like
Agreed.
I feel like there's still the way that he coaches sometimes shows a lack of confidence in his group. Right? Like not playing Oliver Kapanen's line more than 15 minutes a game until you start losing 10 games out of 12 or 10 games out of 13. To me, like, why are we over relying on Jake Evans and Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher when combined they have 3 goals in the last 6 weeks?
Agreed.
Right?
Yep.
When Oliver
Yep.
Kapanen is now
Yep.
second in goal scoring, Ivan Demidov at the time was leading rookies in scoring, and then you happen to put a Uri Slavkovsky on that line. Like, to me, that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So there are key elements or habits that he is in that he's recognized that he needs to break in order to maybe reach another level in terms of how he's able to extract the maximum from his players. But again, a lot of people are going to put the fault on him. I
Correct.
think that he was not served the best situation to be able to get this team to the playoffs if ever they ran into injuries, which they did not last year.
And he's not the coach that take them to the Stanley Cup. Like the Canadiens are years away from contending for the Stanley Cup, man. Let's be honest. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Let me put this comment on the board here as Naz, frequent viewer on the channel, cross-referencing management teams. Ken Hughes and Jeff Gordon versus Marc Bergevin. 10 years, 2 conference finals, 1 final. Hughes and Gordon year 4, and playing like they did in year 2 of the rebuild.
You want a money quote? Yeah, no, first of all, I agree with this. I definitely agree with this. It is hilarious to look at this quote and not recognize the elite core that Marc Bergevin inherited.
Yes.
Like PK Subban won a Norris. Carey Price won a Vezina. Mike Pacioretty was a 30 to 35 goal scorer. You had the 3rd overall pick in a draft. And Andrei Markov is a number 1 defenseman already playing for your team. Yep. Thomas Plekanec is already on your team. Like, he inherited such an NHL ready core and simply didn't add to it.
No.
Other than Jeff Petrie.
Well, dude, I mean, Andreas Martinson, Dwight King, Steve Ott, like just
we're not even talking like,
well,
look at how that core evolved so rapidly from that point. That's what I feel like the Canadiens are going to be doing with this core now. Like you talk about that was a lineup that was meant to win immediately.
Yeah.
And it was backstopped by Carey Price reaching a peak by PK Subban playing to a Norris level, along with an Andrei Markov. So you had 2 number 1 defensemen at that time. The Canadiens currently have 3 top pair defensemen, in my opinion. And all of these guys were hitting their primes. Whereas the Canadiens' best elements, outside of Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield, are all under the age of 23. Mm-hmm. It's not the same. It's not the same. And I think when you look at the 10 years of Marc Bergevin, well, let's look at the 10 years of Ken Hughes and Jeff Gordon down the line.
Exactly.
Then we'll have a conversation. But I do have a really solid quote from Brendan Gallagher that I want to bring about. One thing that I could tell Canadiens fans in regards to Jacob Fowler potentially playing and the pressure of the Montreal market. One thing I could tell Canadiens fans is to remember at what point Carey Price was good, but also to remember how difficult things were for him in the beginning.
Oh my gosh.
And this is exactly what I've been talking about since the beginning of this show is Carey Price played a couple of games against Pittsburgh and so on to start the season, and then he was sent down to Laval for a while. And then I feel like the Montreal Canadiens, at that time, Bob Gainey made the mistake of trading Cristobal Huet to Washington and anointing Carey Price the number one. He had all the momentum in the world as a rookie. But when the sophomore season hit, we all remember how the Centennial season turned out. And that's when, things went a little down. And so when I talk about looking back at the past, everyone remembers how Carey Price came out of the shortened lockout in 2012, 2013. But you got to remember what it was like between 2009 and 2011. People were ready to trade Carey Price out and keep Yaroslav Halak.
Mm-hmm.
So,
oh God, yeah.
Do you want to do that again? Potentially. And so that's why I hold myself with a little bit of, a little bit of caution when it comes to this. But the hype is real when it comes to Jacob Fowler. And I think he will be a player to watch in the Canadiens long term. This is not a savior situation.
Yeah. I mean, I love the strategy. Okay, Carey Price, I need you to make 35 stops tonight. We're going to win this game 2-1. And let's see how far that can carry us. And, then we could talk about the All-Canadian division and how the Montreal Canadiens became the Western Conference champs en route to a Stanley Cup final, losing in 5 games to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Even at the time too, it wasn't anything that you can look at and say, all right, I could see the building blocks of this foundation for the foreseeable future. And I stand by what I've said to you before, and I stand by it today. The foundation to me has not looked more credible than it currently does today under this regime. Yeah. No doubt in my mind about that all day, every day.
Yeah, they just have to add the depth at this point so that they can withstand these injury bugs, and I think they're in business. One last thing, Martin St. Louis has said that it's not guaranteed that Jacob Fowler will play during this road trip.
Crazy.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take that with a grain of salt. He's just trying not to make the media frenzy and craze around this player get too crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if they withhold the identity of the goaltender that they're going to be using until.
I wonder who the backup's going to be. Let's say he plays tomorrow in Pittsburgh.
It looked like Dobesh was the third goalie.
Okay. Yeah, out of respect. It makes sense in my mind. Just out of respect for Sam Montembeault being the older guy, the guy under contract, right? The guy that was the number one and everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that holds true. Slavkovsky practicing off the top line. Zachary Bolduc brought back up there. And Owen Beck down the middle, because if you're just joining us, Jake Evans seeing a doctor in Philadelphia. Expected to join the team in New York against the Rangers. Whether he plays or not, TBD. Keep it locked to this channel. We've got an extensive kind of breakdown on Jacob Fowler that's going to be out for members today. It will be released widely to the public tomorrow. But you can subscribe to the channel for $2.99 a month and cancel at any time. No commitment beyond that. And Marco D'Amico, I encourage you to check out his interview on BPM with Jacob Fowler, and he's got some good stuff coming around the corner here, in particular with Lane Hudson's brother, and I'll stop there. Big shout out to all of our sponsors, cheapesttshirts.ca. We're going to be live December 23rd at Maison Publique McLean's on Peel Street for a live viewing party with the Canadiens and the Boston Bruins. Big thanks to Catherine Prince. CatherinePrince.ca is her website, the best in the business, from Remax Platine and all of our friends at Cabletel and Morella's Steakhouse. Marco, thanks as always, man. And we'll be back Friday at noon to recap, hopefully, Jacob Fowler's NHL regular season debut. Thank you, man.
Always a pleasure, guys. Have yourselves a good day.